Okay, thanks everyone. Welcome to the webinar, How to Grow Your Subscription Business on a Global Scale. My name is Nate Murray and I'm the Demand Generation Manager at BlueSnap, and I'm here with Jeff Capolo, also from BlueSnap, and Jim Ukill from Zuora, both of whom are going to talk a little bit today about tips and the process of selecting the best payments and subscription management platforms for your business, and why the right choice can really benefit you, especially if you're looking at global payments. Jim and Jeff are also going to touch on the recent Zuora Subscribe show that was held in San Fran, and specifically this idea of the end of ownership. So we intentionally kept this webinar brief so as not to interrupt your day too much. So Jeff, why don't I hand the reins over to you so we can get things underway.
Sounds good. Thank you, Nate. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. So I think maybe as a starting point, we might talk a little bit about some of the trends and conversations we heard about at the recent Zuora Subscribe show in San Francisco. Jim and I can each comment on this, but I think the main things that we heard about, conversations we had with merchants at the show, were mainly around, obviously, growth in subscriptions as a business model that continues to grow at a very rapid pace. We're also hearing from a lot of merchants about international expansion and cross-border payments. And then finally, we heard a lot about merchants that as they grow, they find themselves with very complex payment setups, and many of them are looking to simplify that to make their lives easier and reconciliation much easier. Jim, did you want to comment a little bit more on the Zuora perspective and this concept of the end of ownership?
Yeah, I think that's thanks, Jeff. I think it's a pretty good coverage there. You know, the key tenet from our keynote speech is this concept of the end of ownership, moving away from the possession of products and moving to being able to use services and goods as needed, basically to reduce lifestyle friction. The idea that you don't have a DVD collection or a CD collection anymore. You might have a video streaming service or on-demand music service through there. So, and obviously these sort of concepts transcend international borders and the like. So there's a fair degree of growing complexity to support all this.
Great. So with that, why don't we dive right in? I'm going to take on the first half of the webinar and tell you a little bit about BlueSnap, what we've built, where we think payments are going, and maybe provide a little bit of context around where we are in the evolution of payments and what we feel is important as businesses are growing and expanding internationally. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So first of all, this is our promise to our merchants. We built this all-in-one payment platform. It's ultimately designed to increase the merchant's revenue and reduce their costs. In a few minutes, I'll show you the product itself and the ways in which we do that. But it's really about making payments simple and reducing the complexity around payments. And this goes beyond domestic payments, but looking to solve for those really complex use cases where merchants aren't limited by borders and they're looking to grow internationally. I think it might help a little bit to just take a step back and look at where we are in the various generations of payments, in the life cycle of payments. If you go back to the 1990s, payments were pretty simple. It was about connectivity, and a merchant would find a gateway, they'd find an acquiring bank they'd connect to, and they would be able to accept an online payment. About 10 years ago, some very innovative companies like Stripe and Braintree came along, and they created this notion of an API. They combined the merchant account with the payment gateway, and they made it really simple and easy for a developer to stand up a checkout page, customize it in any way they wanted, and be off and selling very quickly. Where we think things are going, and this is the platform that we've built, and we've been at it for about 6 years, is building this notion of an all-in-one platform that's really payments as a service. It's basically a single feature-rich platform that includes the gateway services, the acquiring banks around the world, and all the features and functionality that a merchant might need in order to sell successfully globally. So that's what we're striving to build. That's what we're building today. and we think we've got a pretty good solution. So this is a pretty common setup of what we're seeing in the market today. And we heard a lot about this at the Subscribe show a couple of weeks ago. If you look at the left side first, it's very common for, as a business, as they grow, they begin to go to gateways and connect to different acquiring banks in order to serve the various regions around the world where they're selling. So it's not uncommon to see a merchant connecting to a gateway in the US and have an acquiring bank there, do something similar in the EU, Asia, Latin America, and maybe they're even coding directly to various alternative payment methods. Things like Apple Pay, Alipay, so forth, GiroPay, you name it, whatever's popular within a region. And then in addition to that, on the right side, it's common to see integrations to a subscription billing engine like Zuora, or an invoicing company, or maybe they're a marketplace and they have a need to split payments, or maybe they have some special reporting solution that they've had to go to. It's very easy to fall into this complex setup if you haven't sort of strategized and pre-thought about where your business is going as you're growing. And that's what we've built this all-in-one platform to solve. Payments are very complex. We're trying to make that simple by creating this Generation 3 platform that combines all of these features into one platform. So let's talk a little bit about what the platform actually does with payments and how we do this with Zuora. At its highest level, we enable merchants to accept a payment in any way that they need to. So whether that be online or optimized for mobile, whether it be sending out an electronic link to an invoice, we enable payments for marketplaces, which involves splitting payments and onboarding in a fast and easy way, potentially hundreds or thousands of vendors that fit within a marketplace. We also are able to sort of white label our solutions so that an ISV, a software platform, can embed payments in their platform and therefore sort of increase the functionality and the usability of their software and not run payments in parallel with it. As you can see, subscriptions, we offer a very robust and rich integration with Zuora. So that's what we're really here to talk about today, but fully integrated the platform features within the Zuora environment. And then finally, virtual terminals and point of sale, taking phone orders and being able to take card present transactions. So the concept here is making sure that in any way that a merchant wants to take a payment, we provide the ability for them to do that. So let's pause for a minute and talk a little bit about what's in the actual product. I'm going to start in the center, and really this is the main key to this, is that through one connection to BlueSnap, through one agreement to BlueSnap, a merchant can access all of these features, all of this functionality, all of these acquiring banks in order to, again, reduce their cost and increase their conversions. So starting at the top, one of the most unique things is our connection with 30 acquiring banks around the globe. What this allows us to do is board a merchant and then set them up with local acquiring in various regions in which they have legal entities and where they're selling. The benefit to that, if we work around clockwise, is it allows us to intelligently route transactions to where the shopper is. And when that happens, they experience higher conversions. They also will reduce cross-border fees and therefore save them money. At 3 o'clock, we enable more than 100 shopper currencies. So it's very important when you're selling internationally to sell in the shopper's preferred local currency. And we settle to the merchants in 14 in a like-for-like way. We also enable more than 100 alternative payment methods. So more and more, we're seeing businesses accepting and needing to accept alternative payment methods as they grow internationally. We're also seeing this a trend within the subscription environment. So the subscriptions are not just around accepting credit cards on a recurring basis. Jim will talk in a little bit about the complexities and the value within their platform, but one of the trends we see is the desire to run a subscription business, but accept something more than just a credit or a debit card. We're big believers in digital wallets. Card not present transactions are all about removing friction and making it fast and easy for people to make payment. So we've pre-integrated with Apple Pay, Google Pay, Visa Checkout, Alipay, PayPal, So rather than a merchant having to code directly to each one of these, they can simply use a simple SDK with BlueSnap, enable the digital wallets, and off they go. We've also got other solutions that are complementary to payments that are pre-built into the platform. Any of these things can be turned on or off, but they're available if the merchant wants to use them. But things like a full fraud prevention solution through Count, that's our partner, or chargeback management through Chargebacks 911. We also integrate with Avalara for tax, in other companies for other compliance-related issues. And then, of course, Zuora for subscriptions, which Jim will get into greater detail later. And then finally, all of this, while it sounds very complex, we provide a full set of reports that consolidate all of this across the 30 banks into one set. Some of the more interesting reports include conversion reports that will show a merchant exactly how their payments are converting by currency, by country, and by payment method. So you can see it's a very complete platform. We continue to add to it. We continue to expand and provide additional features globally. But this is where we see payments going. We think that merchants are looking to greatly simplify their payment setup, and all that can be done through this one all-in-one platform. Of course, in addition to our technology partnership with Zuora, we're also integrated to many of the platforms that businesses rely on to run their businesses. So whether that be the popular shopping cart platforms like Magento or accounting and ERP tools, if a merchant is relying on it, we probably have a direct integration with it. Taking a little bit of a deeper dive into what's in the Zuora integration, to highlight some of the key features. These next few slides will just sort of highlight that. So, obviously this is about increasing sales, and that's done through that intelligent payment routing process and our ability to connect a merchant through our one connection and leverage all of those acquiring banks around the world to eliminate cross-border fees and increase their conversions. We're also a gateway and a merchant account provider all in one. So the merchant doesn't have to go out and get their own merchant accounts. BlueSnap provides that along with the gateway. And I mentioned we use Count for fraud. We've got a number of partners that are best in class. Count's one of them, but it's pre-built into the platform and easy to turn on for the merchants. We sell in multi-currencies. So I mentioned on the wheel on 2 slides earlier that you can sell in up to 100 currencies. It's also important to board these merchants quickly and easily. Within minutes, we leverage an auto onboarding process and can get them set up and ready to sell. And then, of course, having a seamless checkout experience is key, certainly having it mobile optimized. All of these things are attained through the Zuora integration. And then finally, you hear a lot about strong customer authentication and the importance of 3D Secure, especially with PSD2 directive coming out in September. This is fully compliant. We will be complying in the fall by the deadline. So that's a key feature built in. We enable level 2 and level 3 data to make processing transactions less expensive for the merchants. And another key feature with subscriptions is obviously account updater, being able to automatically update cards as they're lost, stolen, expiring, and so forth. So that's the product itself. Obviously, we serve thousands of merchants globally. Here's sort of a logo splash of some of the merchants that we work with today in handling their payments. A quick snapshot on who we are. BlueSnap has been around since 2001. We were acquired by a couple of large private equity firms, Great Hill Partners and Parthenon Capital Partners, about 8 years ago. We've invested about $200 million in the platform to build this all-in-one solution. We're headquartered here in Boston. We've got offices in Israel, London, Silicon Valley, and continue to grow. So with that, I think I've taken up all of my time. Jim, I'm going to kick it over to you to talk about Zuora and your platform and what's happening in the world of the end of ownership.
Terrific. Thank you. Thanks, Jim. All right. So a nice segue there, Jeff. Thank you very much. really quick blurb about Zuora. Silicon Valley company, 12 years old. We currently have a global presence with about 1,300 employees, 15 plus offices around the world, and subscriptions are what we do. So we talked a little bit at the beginning of the webinar about this concept of the end of ownership. We late last year we employed a polling firm to essentially ask a series of questions about what consumers see about the world of subscriptions. I think we covered about 12 countries and about 13,000 respondents. So what's really really remarkable is this concept of subscriptions, this rapid transition from ownership to subscriptions. That over a 5-year period, we saw a jump in the number of people with subscriptions. We saw a huge lift in the number of people with multiple subscriptions. But one of the ideas that's really interesting is this to see a rise in the sentiment that a person's status is no longer tied to what they own, and that the idea that this frees people from the burden of ownership. But the trend isn't really like being driven just by consumers. We see businesses and industries also making this fundamental shift from technology and information and manufacturing. The big however here is that while subscriptions free consumers and businesses from the burden of ownership, managing these subscriptions is a challenge for traditional business processes, from pricing, from operating in different channels, from being able to handle changes in subscriptions, managing revenue recognition, and more importantly, understanding your customer. We're not just doing a one-off point of sale now. We're sort of going on a lifelong journey with the customer and what they're buying from you or buying through you or who they are. So Zuora solves these challenges with a pure play in subscriptions and a recurring revenue platform. We exist between, place ourselves firmly between existing traditional CRM and ERP systems. And the way we've done it is that we've built a set of applications to help subscription businesses streamline their order to revenue processes through Zuora Billing, Zuora Collect, Zuora RevPro, Zuora CPQ. We also maintain a marketplace of third-party applications for companies to get a quick start on applications like tax connectors and e-signing documents, and of course, our favorite payment gateways like partners like BlueSnap. And that's really about it for us. From the Zuora side, we invite you to visit Zuora.com for any more information, but we're certainly happy to answer any questions that the attendees might have.
Thanks, Jim. So we've actually had a couple of questions come in through chat, but first Jeff, I'm gonna give it back to you so that you can answer the questions.
Sure.
You can see them.
Thanks, Nate. So one of the questions that has come in is regarding PSD2, an awareness around the deadline coming up, and what is BlueSnap and Zuora doing to address that, and what does it mean for merchants? So what I would say, I think if anyone's not familiar with this, there's a new PSD2 directive that's being mandated for strong customer authentication, and the deadline for that is September 14th. A lot of people aren't ready for this. Maybe that deadline is going to get moved up, but everybody is required to be ready and comply by September 14th. We certainly will be. Zuora will be. Anecdotally, we're also conducting a webinar on July 25th with Cardinal Commerce, which is now a Visa-owned company, to talk very specifically and in depth about what PSD2 means, what are the requirements, and what we're doing to make sure that all of our merchants are ready for that. So if you really want an in-depth review of that, July 25th, we'll be conducting that webinar with Cardinal Commerce. I don't know if you wanted to add anything more to that on PSD2, Jim.
Yeah, obviously it's a big focal point for us. You know, we have multiple payment partner gateways around the world, and PSD 2.0 is particularly applicable to EMEA-based transactions. So for our global partners, this is obviously a key concern to get in place and get it right the first time.
Yeah, great. So maybe switching to another question, we got a question around what do we see as the next big growth area for subscriptions and payments? What are sort of the big trends that we're seeing in this area and how it relates to both BlueSnap and Zuora? I guess for me, the biggest things are a couple of things that I might have mentioned at the very beginning, which is the growth in international and cross-border, and also the growth in the future of alternative payment methods being used within the subscription model. So traditionally, these have been very sort of domestic businesses, card-oriented. We're seeing a need to conduct subscriptions and being able to accept payment methods and currencies from literally all over the world. Jim's correct in that this sort of end of ownership concept is really big, and the notion of recurring revenue is something that all businesses want. So the more you can combine the benefits of a sort of broad-based, thorough payments platform with that subscription model, the more successful you're going to be at selling.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the other, just to sort of back up the idea that expanding internationally is and having the ability to work with solid partners like Zuora and BlueSnap to be able to operate in regions that maybe hadn't been traditional to you, but it's certainly a great place to expand. I think there's a wealth of expertise and depth in both organizations to help pursue those aims.
Great. So I'm reading through these questions here. It looks like most of them we've answered already. They're pretty much centered around merchants and international payments. But in case you do have extra questions, anyone can email me specifically and I'll get the answers for you. Again, my name is Nate Murray. My email is nate.murray@bluesnap.com. And we'll also follow up to all attendees with a recording of this video, of this webinar. So you'll have that to refer back to. So I hope everyone enjoyed the webinar and gained some good insights into not only the end of ownership, but BlueSnap and Zuora.